Hello and welcome to Culture Group headquarters here in sunny Cardiff. I'm here with Glynn Pegler. How are you, Glynn?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And we're here to talk about Culture Group and how you arrived at this point, and perhaps for those of us not familiar with your start and your beginnings in business, perhaps you could fill us in a little bit about how you got here.
Wow, okay. Well, I started my business when I was about 15. It was down to the fact that there wasn't really any sort of opportunities around where I grew up, which was a valleys town called Caerphilly in South Wales. And I really was just a bit frustrated with the lack of potential and the lack of people achieving their potential around me, and wanted to just do something about that. So myself and a bunch of mates got together, started talking and came up with the idea of doing a magazine. We wanted to look at how we could take this on a different level to how people would normally do something like a magazine, and actually produce something which I think shocked everybody, because it was a glossy, full entertainment publication, which covered everything from celebrity interviews to sport to reviews and all sorts of bits and pieces in between. That sort of snowballed and spiraled a little bit out of control from that point onwards, and just turned into this own beast which just kept growing and growing in both its circulation and the support. And I was literally doing my A-levels and doing my lessons and then going straight down into the office. I was renting in the town centre, ringing up record labels, EMI and Sony Music, and getting interviews with different artists. And then going back up to school again and doing some more lessons, and then I was heading off to a party that someone was hosting, or a BBC press launch or that sort of stuff, and it just turned into this random teenager's lifestyle that wasn't really the traditional, but it just was something that I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to grow something and make something exciting and create some opportunities for other people.
So you mentioned you started it, or you kind of had a mind map with your mates, and you were kind of like, yeah, let's do a magazine. How did that dynamic work then? Did you begin working with your friends?
It was the starting point was actually I was editor of my school's magazine.
Oh, I see.
And I went from being editor of the school's magazine to saying I'd like to take this a bit further. The school magazine I found a little bit limiting for what I wanted to do. Yeah. Naturally, the audience was fairly limited to that school, and I just said, well, I want to do something that can make this bigger. And I was looking around for different types of support, and I realised that I needed to put a team in place around me to actually be able to deliver a magazine on a regular basis. Yeah. So I found a few like-minded friends who wanted to come and get involved in that process, or who wanted to come and get involved in the process, and basically just delegated a few different roles to people as individuals. So somebody was doing the fashion advice, someone was doing the reviews, someone was coordinating different stuff going out to gigs, and then we started looking around for different funding sources. Right. And a family friend of ours, a family friend of mine, put me in touch with the Prince's Trust.
Okay.
And that was sort of a starting point, really. So yeah, a family friend of mine put me in touch with Prince's Trust. From there, applied for some funding, was fortunately successful, and yeah, didn't look back from that point.
That's interesting. So you had this relationship with the Prince's Trust. How did that develop? I mean, how important was that in your development as a company?
The Prince's Trust were a fantastic organisation for us to have a starting point with, and for me to start my business. They were prepared to take a chance on me. There was, as I said before, not many other opportunities in the area I grew up, and particularly I was classed as coming from a disadvantaged community in terms of the history of sort of the local economy. And yeah, they were just a good foundation. I was really fortunate to get the backing of some key people within the Prince's Trust who saw the potential in what I was trying to achieve. And we actually became one of their top 5 success stories for the Prince's Trust's 25th anniversary celebrations.
Wow.
Which was 10 years ago. And from that point onwards, things have just grown and grown and grown. I think it was more the fact that the Prince's Trust gave me some of the best advice I think I've ever had, which was to look at how I protected my intellectual property and look at how I wanted to develop this, because they saw the asset I had way before I could see the potential of it. And they knew what I had on my hands, and they sort of gave me the advice to look at how I protected that.
And do you think that's an age thing then? Because obviously you were quite young when you approached the Prince's Trust, and so them giving you that advice, do you think that was something that for instance, an SME now would kind of know kind of as standard, or do you think it's an important piece of business advice that should be taken across the board?
I think knowing how to protect your intellectual property is vital now for any business going forward. I think it's the key thing that most businesses miss when they're starting out. And I think it's the fundamental on how people can look to exploit what they've really got.